then you look at guys like Joe Labus, who everybody really saw entering the portal, quarterback who started that bowl game, led them to the 21-0 victory. Ultimately didn't get a chance this year behind Deacon Hill, which a lot of people took issue with in the fan base for sure. A little bit more mobile than Deacon. So take what you will and garner what you will from that. But I think he'll be successful somewhere, probably group of 5. He'll at least get a shot. I'd have to think off the top of my head. Jackson Filer is another guy that hit the portal. He was another Iowa Western transfer. He was the NJCAA Defensive Player of the Year. Chose Iowa over like 11 other offers that were FCS in group of 5. So I'd have to go ahead and take a look at, I think there's one more, but those are the ones that are notable. We had a huge conversation on Hotcast last week about the issue of Joe Labus entering the portal and what that says about Iowa and its quarterback development. Because here we are a year later where Joe Labus was the starter against Kentucky. And here we are with Iowa having 2 scholarship quarterbacks entering their playoff game for the second year in a row, and they're 2 different scholarship quarterbacks. Labus, Carson May were the 2 scholarship quarterbacks in that Kentucky bowl game. Here we are 2 years later, and it's Deacon Hill and it's Marco Lainez. And your starter was hurt in both games. Like, I think if there's any indictment of this issue of developing quarterbacks, getting them to stick around, and I don't know, you can't make everybody happy in college football, right? But like getting to develop quarterbacks, bringing them in and putting them into situations that make them successful. Like that's the bottom line, right? They just haven't done it, especially over the last decade and a half.
Which leads me to this, Elliot. This team has a starting quarterback for next season, of course, Cade McNamara. And now they have a backup quarterback in Deacon Hill, who, regardless of how you evaluate his performance, has a lot of meaningful snaps under his belt in big games. I still think that this program should go out and get a transfer quarterback to compete or be a more serviceable backup, or compete with Cade McNamara, who I understand there's some level of accomplishment there, but he's not a top-notch quarterback. Do you see them doing that?
Mark, if I had to put odds on it, I'd probably say 60-40 that they don't, because they'll have 4 scholarship quarterbacks. They'll have Cade, they'll have Deacon, they'll have Marco Lainez and James Reeser coming in 2024. And then they've got Tommy Paholski as a walk-on. Well, they have 5 quarterbacks, 4 on scholarship. I don't see them thinking that 5th scholarship at the quarterback position is as valuable as it could be used elsewhere in the portal. That's really what it comes down to. And 2, Kirk also has repeatedly defended Deacon almost like with his life, because Deacon was so bad. You almost have to be that dramatic and say with his life, because Deacon was a statue back there. Deacon was completing 35% of his passes at one point in time. His QBR was like 1 during the first half of a game this year, like literally 0-1. It couldn't have been worse. And so, and Kirk continued to defend him. Yeah, they went out and got Deacon last year, but like, and especially if their OC is Paul Chryst, if that's who they bring in, all the more reason they run with Deacon Hill, because Chryst was the head coach when they signed Hill at Wisconsin. And if they retain John Budmeyer on top of that, they both like Cade McNamara. As far as I can tell, I haven't heard anything about that with Chryst, but they both like Deacon. James Reeser, I've really been impressed with. I'm excited to see what he does. And Marco Lainez is another guy that I think could get there. But how much do you trust Iowa football development at the end of the day, right? With quarterbacks, it just goes back to that last conversation. So I think they're just going to put that value elsewhere, whether it's on the defense, a defensive back, whether it's a receiver. I just don't see them using more than 4 scholarships on a quarterback. And people are clamoring for that. People want that. I just don't see it happening. I think they see value in Cade. I think they see value in Deacon Hill getting those snaps. And I think they see value in that first year in the program for Marco Lainez to where they're comfortable with where they're at quarterback. And like, if you go out and get a transfer, like, how do you manage the egos in that room, right? Because Cade left Michigan because he wasn't the guy anymore, right? And he kind of just needs that, from what I understand, what I've been told. He just kind of needs to know that he is that guy, that security. 2, Deacon. Well, 1, they're like I said, they're comfortable with Deacon and him getting that starting or those starting snaps this year. And I believe, wouldn't be surprised if Deacon sees that as value to the point of like, I started. Why the hell are you bringing somebody else in to be his number 2? I've already started games. I led us to 10 wins. I took us to a bowl game against Tennessee that they may very well win. And then you look at Marco and it's like, well, I've spent a year here. Am I going to be the starter at any point? Same thing for James coming in. Like, do you not trust me to take over in 2 or 3 years? Like, and with quarterbacks, I don't mean specifically these quarterbacks. I mean quarterbacks in general. Egos are just a huge part of that. Sure. And there's only one on your roster.
Yeah.
There's only one that gets to play, or not only one on your roster, only one that gets to play.
Yeah, it's completely different than any other position.
Exactly.
In that, just in a number of ways, but specifically from a numbers standpoint.
Exactly. You can't take a right tackle who's not playing and put him at right. Like, it's not the same thing. You can't say, oh, the quarterback's not working out, we're going to Marvin McNutt it and put him at wide receiver. Like, you can't do that with all your quarterbacks, right? That just aren't seeing the field. And I think they're transitioning more into bringing in athletes at quarterback. James Reeser being one. I mean, he's in Florida, so he's already started his track season, if that tells you anything. Mm-hmm. And he's a quarterback, and he's been able to run like 10.6 in the 100. Didn't qualify for state in Florida, by the way, when that would be like a perennial state champ in Iowa. But he's been able to run 10.6 as a quarterback. He's had some health issues, but like, they are leaning more of that athlete route. I don't think he wants to come in and play wide receiver, though, right?
Yeah, and so I say that, totally understanding what you're talking about concerning not needlessly upsetting the room, the culture, all of that. But at the same time, head coaches are dealing with this, obviously, all over the place. And if you liken yourself as a competitive team, a team that is in search of staying in championship contention, these are the type moves that are being made across the country. Again, strategically, not just like, oh, we'll just bring in all sorts of talent and fill up every position and piss people off and so forth. Not in a reckless way, but at the same time, their quarterback situation is, if Cade's healthy and if he is as productive as he was his one Michigan starting season, hey, that would be a good position for them to be in. But you can't just ride a precarious type situation that's one play away from, again, having arguably the worst quarterback situation in the Big Ten.
Yeah. You said it, Mark. But whether or not that happens is the question, right? Whether or not I would be quite surprised if they do bring in a transfer quarterback. I'll say it like that. Sure. I mean,
I agree.
Everything that I listed out, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. What I'm saying is that I'd be surprised if they did. Yeah. And I don't know. It obviously all depends on where else that other scholarship goes, right? Because if you're bringing in another Nick Jackson, then, as somebody who watches the team and like, sign me up. Nick Jackson was phenomenal this year, and he was integral in what they wanted to do. If you're using it to bring back Jay Higgins or to bring back Cooper DeJean, then I'll have nothing to say about it. But if Iowa gets to a point next year where Cade now has had surgery on 2 ACLs, he had that thigh issue. Deacon Hill was Deacon Hill this year. What if you end up in a situation where you're playing Washington and Deacon Hill is your starter? you don't have a chance in hell in that game. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, but like then you go from the Big Ten West where that, it flew, it worked. You won 10 games. Well, obviously, I know Nick Jackson's not coming back.
Corey
I mean,
stopped in.
I meant as in go get a Nick Jackson out of the portal, somebody who's that good. So hopefully nobody else understood it as that. But as I was saying, it's going to be tough as hell to win with this new Big Ten at Deacon Hill as your starter. It just is. No conferences. Like, good luck. If you're willing to bet your season on that, man, we'll see how it shakes out for you. I don't see it going well.